The auction hall at Sotheby's gleamed with chandeliers and old money. Frank Whitmore stepped to the podium, gavel in hand. In the back row, unnoticed, sat a man in a worn tweed jacket. Robert Duvall held a leather portfolio on his lap.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lot 47, the 1721, Lady Blunt Street, Stradivarius. Bidding opens at $50,000.
50. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Frank squinted at the paddle raised in the back.
$50. Is this a joke? Perhaps we can start with serious bidders.
Billionaires in the front rows chuckled, their paddles resting on silk-clad knees. Robert lowered his paddle, his expression unchanged. No trace of shame, no flicker of anger.
50,000. Do I hear 50,000?
The bidding began again, and the man in the back row was dismissed and forgotten as quickly as he had spoken. Bidding climbed quickly. 100,000, 200,000, paddles flashing across the room.
300,000 to the lady in pearls. Now 400. Who will give me 400?
At $500,000, the momentum stalled, a few paddles hesitating in the velvet rows. 50.
Absolutely not. We are not playing games here. This is a serious auction for serious people.
He turned his back on paddle 47 and gestured toward a heavy-set man in the front row.
Sir, your paddle, 550,000, I believe. A man who understands value.
The room obeyed Frank's cue and ignored the interruption completely. The bidding surged past 600,000. Robert lowered his paddle once more, his expression unchanged, the same half-lidded calm, the same leather portfolio resting on his knee. For the second time that afternoon, he had been erased from the room's attention, and he did not seem to mind at all. Bidding soared past $1 million, the room electric with competition, the violin's amber wood glowing under the spotlight.
1.2 million. 1.3. Do I hear 1.4?
A brief pause settled over the room. Paddles lowered as wealthy bidders recalculated their limits. 50. Frank's gavel slammed against the sound block, the sharp crack cutting through the murmur, his face flushing with barely contained fury.
Security. If this man interrupts again, remove him from the hall immediately.
2 dark-suited guards stepped forward from the side wall, their eyes trained on the back row. Robert did not acknowledge them. He kept his focus on the podium. He folded his hands over the worn leather portfolio, his gaze still fixed on the violin shimmering under its spotlight.
Not yet, but soon.
The auction resumed, numbers climbing again. But now a thin tension threaded through the hall. The man in the back had not been forgotten, and Frank kept glancing toward him, unease flickering behind his practiced disdain. Bidding surged past 2 million, then 3, the numbers rising like a fever as Frank's chant drove the room faster.
4 million. Do I hear 4 million? Now 5. 5 million to the bidder on the left.
Robert's hand rested on the leather portfolio, still heavy, the only part of him that betrayed any tension.
5.8. 6 million. Going once, going twice.
The Stradivarius glowed under its spotlight, untouched, and Robert's unblinking eyes remained fixed on the instrument, as if reaching across the room.
40 years in a workshop, touching the wood the master touched. Not yet.
Past 7 million, the room winnowed to a handful of billionaires, each bid a cold chess move, and still Robert had not stirred.
7.3. 7.5. Now 8 million. Who will give me 8?
Robert's grip tightened on the portfolio, knuckles pressing into the worn leather. As the bidding hit 8 million, the violin slipping further away. The violin was within reach of the world's wealthiest hands, and the man in the tweed jacket did not move, did not bid, did not blink. At $9 million, only 5 bidders remained, their paddles raised with the precision of predators.
9.5. Who will make it 10? $10 million is a bargain for a Stradivarius.
Robert's chest rose and fell beneath his tweed jacket. He pushed his glasses back with a slow, deliberate finger.
10 million. 10 million to number 22. Now 10.5. Do I hear 10.5?
Only 3 bidders remained: a tech titan, an oil baron, a Russian collector. Frank fed off their rivalry.
11 million. Going once. 11.5. Now 12. Who will give me 12?
Inside the violin's F-hole, a faded label read, Antonio Stradivari, 1721, made for a French noblewoman, Margaret de Villeroy. At the mention of the noblewoman, Robert's jaw tightened for the barest instant, his eyes still locked on the instrument.
12 million to the bidder on the right. Going once. Going twice.
The room held its breath. Robert sat forward, his hand sliding to the portfolio's clasp. The bidding pushed past 13 million. The air thick with competition as the 3 remaining billionaires refused to yield.
13.5. Now 14. Who will give me 14?
Robert's thumb traced the cold brass of the portfolio clasp, a single controlled motion, but he made no move to open it.
14.5. Now 15 million, a historic bid for a historic instrument.
At 15 million, Frank's voice cracked with triumph, and the 3 bidders hesitated, their paddles trembling. Robert sat motionless, the leather edge of the portfolio cool beneath his fingertips, his expression unreadable.
15 million. Going once. Going twice.
The oil baron threw down his paddle. Done. 2 rivals remained, their eyes burning with diminishing resolve. The clasp rested under Robert's thumb, heavy with 8 figures of certitude, and still he held the moment suspended. The room crackled with expectation. Robert's thumb pressed against the cold brass, but the portfolio remained shut. The bid climbed to 19 million. The phone bidder's line went dead. Only 2 rivals remained, their paddles quivering.
Going once. At 19 million. Going twice.
$20 million.
The room froze. Every head swiveled toward the back row, where paddle 47 stood tall, its yellow circle burning like a dare.
20 million? From you? After $50? This is absurd.
Robert did not flinch. The calm in his eyes was absolute, the portfolio still closed, his breathing steady.
You have no right to bid that amount. Security.
But the security guards did not move. They, too, were staring at the man in the tweed jacket. Frank's gavel fell to the podium with a clatter, his hand empty, his face draining of color. The auction had just become something no one in that room could have predicted, and for a long moment no one spoke.
Proof of funds. Immediately. This auction will not proceed until this man demonstrates he has the money.
Madeline Chen, Sotheby's senior client specialist, stepped forward from the periphery, her clipboard tight against her chest. Robert flicked open the clasp of his portfolio and withdrew a single white envelope, the bank's insignia gleaming under the chandeliers. He pushed the envelope across the gilded armrest toward her, the seal unbroken, his name embossed in sober black ink. Madeline took it without a word, slipped a finger under the flap, and unfolded the document inside. Her eyes traveled down the page, the faintest twitch of her brow the only crack in her professional facade. The auction hall fell silent, every billionaire leaning forward, every breath held.
Well, what does it say?
Madeline raised her gaze, the paper trembling slightly in her grip, and looked directly at Frank without speaking. The room waited, suspended between disbelief and the unmistakable fact that this man in the tweed jacket had just changed everything.
$80 million. Certified funds.
The words landed like a physical blow. The room gasped collectively, a sharp intake of breath from 100 throats. Frank Whitmore's face went the color of old paper, his mouth opening and closing twice without producing any sound at all. Robert remained perfectly still, the faintest trace of a smile touching the corner of his lips, his hand resting on the now empty portfolio.
That's impossible. Where did you get that kind of money?
Madeline turned the document for all to see. The bank's seal glittered under the chandelier light, indisputable. Billionaires shifted in their velvet seats, their expressions cycling from confusion to awe, as if the floor had tilted beneath them. Frank gripped the podium as though the ground had vanished under his feet, his gavel forgotten on the floor.
Now they know the price of the music that was stolen from us.
The room that had laughed at $50 now understood. This man could buy the violin 10 times over and still have millions left.
You think a piece of paper changes anything? Where did that money come from? Answer me.
Madeline Chen held the certified letter higher, her voice cutting through the tension with practiced restraint.
The funds are verified by the Federal Reserve. Sotheby's accepts the bid. There is no irregularity.
Frank's hand trembled on the podium. Robert did not move, his gaze fixed on the violin, as if the auctioneer no longer existed.
Very well. The bid stands at $20 million.
The auction resumed, but the energy had shifted. Billionaires eyed Robert like wolves confronting an unfamiliar predator. Paddles that had flown confidently, minutes before now lay motionless on silk-clad laps.
Do I hear 21 million? 21 million? Anyone?
The room remained silent. Robert's paddle, still raised, seemed to hold the entire hall in a quiet spell. Robert waited. The portfolio closed, the yellow circle on his paddle glowing under the chandelier. The auction had only begun. A hand shot up from the front row, the tech mogul, his face desperate, voice cracking as he broke the heavy silence with a bid that felt more like a plea.
21 million. The bid is $21 million.
The room exhaled a collective breath, but before the sound finished traveling the marble hall, Robert's paddle cut the air with absolute finality.
22 million.
Frank's chant stumbled. He had to repeat the number aloud, as if testing whether his own ears were betraying him. The oil baron's paddle clattered onto the floor, the sound sharp as a gunshot, his face crumpling into defeat.
22 million. Going once.
The tech mogul gripped his paddle until his knuckles went white, the wood creaking under the pressure, but he did not raise it again.
Courage costs more than money. They are learning that now.
The contest was over. What remained was an exhibition of quiet power, and Robert Duvall was the only one still standing. The tech mogul, sweat beading on his forehead, stared at the violin as if calculating every dollar of his net worth, then thrust his paddle upward with a final, desperate motion.
23 million. The bid is 23 million.
The number hung in the air, a desperate, final salvo from the only rival who still dared to challenge the man in the tweed jacket. For the first time, something shifted in Robert's expression, a flicker of pain, or perhaps a distant memory, crossing his features before settling back into stone.
She held it, in a room of silk and gold, 200 years ago.
His hand moved to the portfolio, fingertips resting on the worn leather, as if drawing strength from something unseen inside. The room held its breath. Frank's gavel hovered in mid-air, frozen by the weight of the moment.
Going once at 23 million.
Robert closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, the faintest tremor in the hand that still touched the portfolio. The decision hung by a thread, and the auction hall felt like the inside of a held breath. Robert looked from the violin to Frank, the decision arriving in his eyes like slow thunder, irrevocable and complete.
$24 million.
The tech mogul's paddle fell from his grip, the clatter cutting through the silence like a final, defeated sigh. Frank's hand trembled so badly, the gavel danced on the sound block as he struggled to regain control of the proceedings.
Going once. Going once at 24 million. going twice.
The hall was so silent that Frank's wavering voice seemed to rebound from the marble walls, unanswered and alone. Robert's eyes glistened behind his gold-rimmed glasses, but not a single tear escaped. This was not a moment for weeping, only for witnessing. Frank's gavel hovered in midair, frozen by the enormity of what was about to happen, his knuckles white against the polished wood. No paddle rose, no voice called out. The auction hall had become a tableau of suspended time, all power concentrated in the back row. Robert waited, the portfolio still and heavy on his lap, the yellow circle on paddle 47 glowing like a quiet sun.
Sold to paddle number 47 for $24 million.
The gavel descended with a final reverberating crack that sealed the auction and tilted the axis of the room. A collective breath released, 100 throats exhaling disbelief, anger, and reluctant awe into the charged silence. Robert rose slowly, buttoned his tweed jacket with deliberate care, and stepped into the aisle. Frank extended a hand across the podium, his smile a thin, desperate offering. But Robert's gaze went straight through him. Without a word, Robert walked toward the podium, the portfolio under his arm like a sacred text. Frank's hand hung in the empty air, a long moment before he snatched it back, his face hardening into something between shame and resentment. The billionaires parted, their faces a mix of confusion and unwilling respect as Robert passed. He stopped before the violin, sealed in its glass case, and a genuine smile finally surfaced, gentle and sad. The room understood nothing yet, but the air crackled with the imminence of revelation. Instead of reaching for the violin, Robert opened the portfolio again and slid his fingers into a hidden compartment. From the worn leather, he withdrew a yellowed envelope sealed with a broken wax crest. The room quieted instantly, the murmur dying as every billionaire leaned forward in confusion.
This is the moment. For her.
Frank stared, his mouth opening as if to object, but no sound came. Robert unfolded the document with the tenderness of a man handling something irreplaceable. The paper crackled in the silence, its age palpable, and the room held its collective breath.
What is the meaning of this? You have your instrument. Now take it and go.
200 years of silence, ending now.
He raised his eyes from the page, and the room waited. 100 strangers on the edge of a story. None of them knew they were about to hear.
I have in my hand a letter, dated 1842, from the estate manager of Margaret de Villeroy.
He read aloud, his voice steady, each word dropping into the silence like a stone.
It records that the slave Dorothy was permitted to hold the Lady Blunt Stradivarius on the occasion of her master's birthday.
The room inhaled in unison. Frank's mouth opened, but no sound emerged.
That slave, Dorothy Duval, was my great-great-grandmother.
He held the photograph up next, a French plantation estate where she had lived and labored.
This violin was in her hands. Her fingerprints are on its history.
Frank's face drained of every trace of smugness, replaced by uncomprehending silence.
The letter ends. The girl handled the instrument with a reverence that surprised us all.
The auction hall was no longer a room of commerce. It had become a witness to a legacy 2 centuries in the making.
10 years ago, I founded the Dorothy Duval Conservatory of Music in Philadelphia.
The plaque on its wall had always read, "Anonymous Benefactor."
I hid my name so that no child would feel they owed anything to me. I built it so they could touch the music that was forbidden to Dorothy. This violin will be its centerpiece forever.
Murmurs erupted. A dozen billionaires lowered their heads, unable to meet his gaze. Frank stood at the podium, the gavel dangling uselessly from his fingers, a man reduced to a backdrop. The conservatory's bronze plaque gleamed in a photo that Robert produced from the portfolio.
The music that was stolen will be returned. This is her homecoming.
The auction hall that had laughed at $50 now bore witness to a debt 2 centuries old being paid in full. Robert lifted the violin case from its pedestal with the care of a man holding a newborn. His grip gentle and certain, he closed the worn portfolio, tucking the 1842 letters safely back into the hidden compartment where it had waited for this day. Frank stood frozen at the podium, his gavel lying forgotten on the marble floor, the silence around him absolute. A billionaire in the front row rose, his mouth opening to form an apology, but Robert raised a gentle hand and shook his head once. No words were needed. Forgiveness had been claimed long before this room had ever heard of a $50 bid. He walked toward the great doors, the violin case in one hand, the portfolio under his other arm, and the room parted before him. Journalists in the hallway scrambled, cameras flashing, a tide of questions that broke uselessly against his steady stride. The heavy mahogany doors swung shut behind him, sealing the auction hall in a stunned, embarrassed quiet. Frank sank onto the podium, his bow tie askew, the room that had laughed at a $50 bid now reduced to a gallery of shame. Outside on the marble staircase, Robert paused, the city's evening light catching his glasses, a quiet smile finally reaching his eyes. The black sedan pulled away from Sotheby's into the evening rain, the violin case resting on Robert's lap like a sleeping child. 3 days later, sun poured through the tall windows of the conservatory's recital hall, falling on a single empty music stand. A technician unlatched the case, and the Stradivarius lay against velvet, its amber wood catching the light like a held breath. A young black girl, braids, bright eyes, stepped forward and lifted the instrument with trembling hands. She tucked the violin under her chin, and the bow met the strings with a tremor that became a pure, clear note. The note grew into a phrase, then a melody, and the hall fell utterly still. On the wall, the bronze plaque caught the sunlight, founded 2014, anonymous benefactor. And the secret it hid was finally complete. She played with a fury and tenderness that silenced every doubt, her small fingers certain on the fingerboard. The last note hung in the air like a question, then faded into a silence that felt like an amen. Outside the conservatory, Robert sat on a stone bench, the portfolio closed on his lap, and listened until the applause began. Inside the conservatory's sunlit foyer, a workman in a gray uniform climbed a ladder with a small bronze plate in his hands. He aligned it below the original plaque, the new line engraved in quiet permanence, "Home of the Lady Blunt Stradivarius." Sunlight struck the new words, making them gleam against the marble like a promise finally kept. Through the open doors, the sound of violins drifted from the recital hall, a dozen young musicians practicing scales with the same reverence. A group of children, instruments raised, followed their teacher's baton with intense focus, their faces lit by the afternoon glow. In the lobby, a new portrait hung in a gilded frame, a 19th century black woman in a simple dress, her hands resting on her lap. Beneath it, a small brass label read, "Dorothy Duval, circa 1824, who held the Lady Blunt Stradivarius." A young student paused before the portrait, her violin case dangling at her side, and stared up at the woman who had once been forbidden even to touch the music. She reached out and lightly touched the bronze plate, a single fingerprint marking the connection between past and present. Outside the window, the city hummed on, unaware that a quiet justice had been wrought within these walls. In the wings of the recital hall, Robert Duvall stood in shadow, one hand resting on the curtain, and watched. On stage, the young girl raised the Stradivarius, the same one that had traveled 2 centuries to find her hands. A teacher stepped forward, gently adjusting the angle of the girl's bow with a soft murmur of instruction. The bow touched the strings, and the first note bloomed, pure, unfiltered, resonant. The girl closed her eyes and played, her small frame swaying with a melody older than herself. Robert's eyes glistened behind his glasses, a tear tracing the cheek that had never flinched at $1 billion bid. He did not wipe it away. This was not a moment for composure, but for completion. The violin sang on, filling the hall with a sound that had been silenced for 200 years. The teacher stepped back, eyes damp, and the girl played on, carrying a history she did not yet fully know. Robert smiled, a deep, quiet smile, and the portfolio on his arm felt lighter than it had in 50 years. The 1842 letter rested in its hidden compartment, the ink no longer a secret, but a homecoming. The bank letter lay beneath it, a transaction that purchased something money could never measure. The violin's label faced the sun, the name Stradivari now twinned with Duval. The bronze plaque, newly amended, cast a shadow that fell like a blessing. Robert's silhouette vanished through the doorway, the portfolio light against his arm. The conservatory rose against the dawn, a violin case resting on the steps like a promise kept. The last note lingered, then slipped into silence, and the silence was full. History does not always roar. Sometimes it waits for a $50 bid, and when the quiet man in the back row speaks, the world listens. Sometimes the ones they ignore are the ones who change everything.